The young twin girls wept with a raw, piercing sound as their mother abruptly lifted and deposited them onto the bed, her movements sharp and hurried. Her hands were busy, frantically thrusting her belongings into a travel bag, her face a mask of tight, fierce determination, as though she were mentally preparing for a confrontation with the entire world. Kwame, her husband, his voice soft and laced with concern, attempted to reason with her. "The infants are clearly distressed," he said gently. "They need their mother's comfort and presence." But Aisha turned on him, her reply delivered with a cold, sharp precision that cut through the tense air. "They are no longer my responsibility or concern," she declared, her gaze fixed somewhere beyond him. "I am leaving you, Kwame." She did not afford him even a fleeting glance as she continued to jam her garments into the bag, her back a rigid line of finality. "Please, I implore you, do not depart," Kwame pleaded, stepping slightly closer. "If not for the love you once held for me, then surely remain for the sake of these blameless children God has so generously bestowed upon us." Aisha spun around, her eyes flashing with indignation. "I did not enter into marriage with you only to endure hardship and suffering," she retorted bitterly. "Since it is evident you are incapable of providing the kind of existence I desire, I am finished. Finished with you. Finished with this life. Do not, under any circumstances, attempt to seek me out or contact me. As for the little ones," she paused, her lips twisting into a cruel, dismissive expression, "handle them as you see fit. Their welfare, their very existence, is of no consequence to me." She added, after a chilling beat of silence, "To be entirely truthful, at this moment, I am utterly indifferent to whether they survive or perish." With that final, devastating declaration, she violently zippered her bag shut, snatched it up, and stormed out of the dwelling, the door slamming shut behind her with a resounding, echoing crash that seemed to punctuate the shattering of their life together. Just a short while before, everything between Kwame and his wife had seemed harmonious, a tapestry of shared dreams and simple contentment. However, circumstances had shifted dramatically and irrevocably the day he received the devastating news of losing his employment. From that precise moment onwards, a constant, low-grade tension had permeated their home, with Aisha ceaselessly issuing threats of abandonment. She found fault with every aspect of their altered lives. She resented the small, humble dwelling they had been forced to move into, and she complained bitterly about the simple, often repetitive sustenance they were compelled to consume. Kwame, his heart heavy with worry and a desperate hope, consistently pleaded with her. He did this not merely out of any lingering affection for her, but primarily, overwhelmingly, for the welfare of their infant daughters, Adwoa and Ngozi, who were then only 3 months old, tiny and utterly dependent. Yet, despite his heartfelt entreaties and visible distress, Aisha never genuinely heeded his words or showed any sign of reconsidering her position. Left alone with the crying infants, Kwame gently cradled the babies in his arms, holding them close to his chest, trying to impart some measure of comfort through his touch. Although their distressed cries continued for a time, he began to softly rock them back and forth, a rhythmic motion that gradually, blessedly, soothed their weeping until it subsided into soft whimpers. As he gazed down upon their innocent, trusting countenances, a heavy, leaden feeling settled deep within his heart, a mixture of sorrow and the crushing weight of sudden, sole responsibility. Yet, as he spoke to them, his voice, though quiet, was imbued with a profound and unwavering resolve. "I may presently lack the financial means to offer you the most privileged or comfortable life," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "but I solemnly vow to you both, my precious daughters, that I will strive every single day to be the most dedicated, the most loving father in the entire world." He continued to sway them softly, the gentle movement a balm against the harsh reality that had just unfolded. Before long, the twin infants, exhausted by their distress, drifted into slumber. The subsequent morning arrived, not with the promise of a new day, but burdened by the immediate, gnawing realities of hunger and anxiety. Kwame awakened to find the dwelling utterly devoid of provisions, his pockets empty of currency, and his two crying babies, Adwoa and Ngozi, requiring sustenance that he could not immediately provide. There was absolutely no time to dwell on self-pity or the injustice of his situation. He needed to act, swiftly and decisively. He had to find a way to provide for his daughters. Since he no longer held a formal company position with a regular income, he took the difficult but necessary step of going out and renting a sturdy pushcart, the kind often used by porters in the bustling city. He then carefully secured the babies to his chest using lengths of cloth, ensuring they were close and protected, and headed directly to the vibrant, often chaotic marketplace, a place teeming with activity and potential, albeit for arduous labor, to seek opportunities for income. He began transporting heavy loads for individuals, sacks of goods, crates, bundles of materials. Many people stared openly at the sight of a man working with infants strapped to his chest. Some regarded him with expressions of genuine compassion, their eyes reflecting understanding and sympathy for his plight. Others offered kind smiles and placed small coins directly into his hands, explicitly stating they were for the children. One elderly woman, her face a roadmap of life's experiences, etched with lines of genuine concern, stopped him deliberately and spoke in a voice that was soft yet carried the weight of profound respect. "My son," she said gently, "you are demonstrating a remarkable, truly commendable dedication to your children." She then, without hesitation, pressed 500 naira, a significant sum to her, into his palm. "This is a small contribution," she explained, "specifically for the little ones." Kwame inclined his head slightly, a gesture of deep gratitude for her unsolicited kindness. He expressed his sincere thanks and, gathering his strength, immediately resumed his demanding work. But not everyone in the marketplace displayed such empathy or kindness. One particularly loud and seemingly cruel woman sneered openly, shouting harsh words that were clearly intended to wound. "Such indulgence, master," she yelled sarcastically across the busy space. "While you were preoccupied with leisure and irresponsibility, you gave no thought to the duties of a father. Now, endure the hardship alone and suffer the consequences." Kwame heard her words distinctly. They stung, landing like sharp blows, yet he remained silent, his gaze fixed forward. He was utterly unconcerned with the opinions or cruel judgments of others. The sole matter of paramount importance to him was the immediate and long-term well-being of his young, vulnerable daughters. After a prolonged day of arduous, physically demanding labor, pushing the heavy cart under the hot sun, Kwame returned home, his body aching but his spirit buoyed by a quiet sense of accomplishment. Despite having spent the entire day propelling substantial burdens while simultaneously caring for and carrying his infants, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had managed to earn sufficient funds to provide for his girls' immediate needs. That evening, he made his way to a nearby local dispensary and engaged in a quiet conversation with the pharmacist, a kind and understanding individual. He explained his difficult circumstances candidly and requested assistance regarding the essential provisions necessary to nourish his babies properly and keep them healthy. The compassionate pharmacist listened attentively and compiled a comprehensive list for him. It included powdered infant formula, a crucial necessity for feeding the babies, and some essential medicines and supplies for baby care, such as diaper rash cream and simple fever reducer. Kwame, feeling a profound sense of thankfulness for this small ray of hope, settled the payment for everything on the list and returned home. His heart filled with a mix of exhaustion and deep gratitude. Day after day, with unwavering determination, he persisted in working, always with the twins securely bound to his chest. He had no other source of support, no family nearby to lend a hand. His mother had passed away some time ago, and he had no sisters or other close relatives to rely upon. It was utterly exhausting, physically and emotionally draining, but he never once voiced a complaint or allowed himself to succumb to despair. In truth, a quiet feeling of joy resided in his heart, a deep satisfaction derived from the knowledge that he was, against all odds, capable of caring for his daughters. Initially, In the immediate aftermath of Aisha's departure, he had harbored significant doubts about his ability to manage this overwhelming responsibility entirely alone. But now, day by day, he was coping, he was providing, and he could see that the infants were not only surviving but thriving under his care. One Monday morning, as he stepped out of his humble dwelling with his trusted pushcart, a familiar, kind voice called out to him, cutting through the morning quiet. It was Mama Aminata, an elderly neighbor known for her warmth and generosity of spirit. She approached him with a gentle smile and spoke with genuine sincerity. "Kwame, my son," she said kindly, "allow me to look after the babies today. I will happily watch over them here at my place until your return this evening." Kwame hesitated, a flicker of apprehension in his eyes, as he had grown fiercely protective of his daughters. Sensing his hesitation, she added gently, "I genuinely, truly wish to assist you. Furthermore, the sun is already becoming too intense for these small, delicate creatures to be out in all day. Have no apprehension. I promise I will provide excellent care for them, as if they were my own grandchildren." After contemplating for a moment, weighing her sincere offer against his own deep-seated protectiveness, Kwame, recognizing the wisdom in her words and the relief it would bring to his arduous day, entrusted the infants to her loving care and set off for his work, the pushcart suddenly feeling lighter. Although he was physically relieved of the strain of carrying the babies throughout the day, a subtle undercurrent of anxiety remained in his heart. Those girls, Adwoa and Ngozi, constituted his entire world, the sole purpose and joy in his life. Since their mother's departure, he had formed an unbreakable, profound bond with them, a connection forged in shared hardship and his boundless love. He knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that he would willingly sacrifice his own life to safeguard theirs. Mama Karo, as everyone affectionately called Mama Aminata, was a woman of humble means, poor in material possessions, but she possessed a truly benevolent heart, overflowing with kindness and compassion. She cared for the babies with profound affection, treating them with the tenderness they deserved. She fed them patiently, bathed them gently, and dressed them in their clean, simple clothes with loving care. When Kwame returned in the evening, weary but hopeful, he discovered his daughters giggling merrily in Mama Karo's arms, their faces bright and happy. He smiled, his heart swelling with deep gratitude for her selfless help, and gently took them back to their home. From that fortunate day forward, Mama Karo assisted him whenever he went out with his pushcart, providing a safe and loving haven for the twins. As the years passed, the twin girls grew up knowing two individuals intimately and profoundly: their devoted, hard-working father, Kwame, and Mama Karo, the kind woman they affectionately referred to simply as Mama. Adwoa and Ngozi did not attend the most prestigious private institutions. Kwame's limited income precluded that possibility. However, their father ensured he worked tirelessly, pushing his cart day in and day out, saving every possible coin to cover their school fees at the local secondary school and procure all the necessary academic materials, textbooks, notebooks, pens. More importantly than material possessions or elite education, he instilled in them, through his actions and his quiet guidance, the invaluable values of kindness towards others, respectfulness for all people regardless of status, and unwavering diligence in their studies and in life. At the age of 18, a milestone moment arrived as the twins successfully completed their studies at the local secondary school, passing their final examinations. Kwame was filled with immense pride, his chest expanding with the joy of their achievement. The girls, spurred by their father's sacrifice and their own aspirations, dedicated themselves to studying day and night, preparing intensely for their university entrance examinations, known locally as the WAC and JAM exams, the gateway to higher education. Adwoa achieved a commendable score of 325 in her JAM results, a score that opened many doors. Ngozi's score was even higher, reaching an impressive 341. To their delight and Kwame's immense pride, both were granted admission to pursue the highly competitive and demanding course of medicine and surgery at the same prestigious university. However, that point, the peak of academic success, marked the beginning of a new, unexpected hardship. One afternoon, Adwoa and Ngozi returned home, their faces radiant, brimming with excitement and laughter. They rushed to their father, practically tumbling over themselves in their eagerness, and proudly presented him with their printed examination result slips. Kwame smiled warmly, his heart swelling with emotion, and congratulated them effusively. "Oh, my daughters," he exclaimed, his voice filled with pride and joy. "You have performed admirably, truly admirably. I am exceedingly proud of you both. Now," he declared, playfully mimicking a man walking with great importance, his chest expanded and head held high. "Now I can finally walk through the city streets with my head held truly high. My daughters," he announced to the empty air, "will soon become medical doctors." They all shared a moment of pure, unadulterated laughter together, the small dwelling suddenly filled with the most joyous sounds imaginable. But later that evening, after the initial elation had subsided and the girls were perhaps preoccupied with their dreams, Kwame quietly retreated into his room, his smile having completely vanished. He sat heavily on the edge of his worn bed, silent and visibly burdened by a sorrow so profound it felt suffocating. He possessed absolutely no funds, not even enough to support the education of one of them, let alone both pursuing such an expensive course as medicine. He felt utterly destitute, stripped bare of resources. He lowered his head into his hands and whispered to himself, the words barely audible, heavy with despair. "All these years," he murmured, "all these years of arduous effort, of pushing that cart, of sacrificing everything. Now my daughters have achieved this incredible success, and I am utterly unable to afford their tuition fees, their living expenses, everything they will need." He felt as though he were drowning in a sea of helplessness, overcome by a crushing wave of shame and inadequacy. Yet, deep within him, a spark of the old resolve ignited. He clenched his fists tightly, digging his fingernails into his palms, and muttered fiercely, "No, no, I will not permit financial constraints, this lack of money, to hinder them now. I will undertake whatever is necessary, endure whatever hardship is required. My daughters," he vowed, his voice firm despite the inner turmoil, "absolutely must become doctors. They deserve this chance." The following morning, Kwame awoke at an exceptionally early hour, long before the first rays of dawn had touched the sky and well before the twins stirred from their sleep. But on this occasion, he did not take his familiar pushcart. He understood deeply in his heart that what was now required, the scale of the financial need, far exceeded the capacity of that old cart and the meager income it could generate. He walked with heavy, purposeful footsteps towards the residence of a wealthy individual in the affluent quarter of the city, a place that felt a world away from his own humble home, and requested an audience. The affluent man, a picture of startled privilege, still attired in his silk sleeping clothes, regarded Kwame with unconcealed suspicion, his eyes narrowed. "What business," he demanded curtly, "brings you to my residence at this unseemly early hour?" Kwame, summoning every ounce of humility and desperation, knelt on the ground before the wealthy man, a gesture of profound respect and supplication in that culture. "Please, sir," he began, his voice trembling slightly but clear, "I implore you, with all the sincerity of a father's heart, to accept me into your household as a domestic worker. I will carry out any task, any duty, no matter how humble or arduous, that you assign to me. I will diligently launder your garments until they are spotless, prepare your meals with care, sweep and maintain your compound until it gleams. I only ask, in return for my total servitude, that you assist me in financing my 2 daughters' university education." He explained to the rich man, pouring out his heart, how Adwoa and Ngozi were his very existence, the sole source of joy and purpose remaining in his world since their mother's departure. He pleaded with the man with all the passion and desperation of a soul drowning in sorrow and hope. "I will serve you faithfully," he vowed, his gaze steady, "like a bondservant, a willing slave, until they complete their degrees, however long that takes." But the rich man, his face impassive and cold, shook his head dismissively and stated flatly, Educating two students in medicine and surgery is a formidable and extraordinarily expensive undertaking. It requires a vast sum. I will not commit myself to such a burden. Kwame rose quietly from the ground, his heart heavy, and departed without another word. He did not cease his efforts there. The fire of his resolve for his daughter's future still burned. He proceeded, with waning hope but unwavering determination, to 5 more affluent households, one after the other, repeating his plea. Each time, he knelt, humbling himself, and implored the wealthy residents, offering to serve in exchange for the priceless opportunity of his daughter's education. But one by one, they all refused, citing the cost, the burden, the lack of obligation. Weary, physically drained, and profoundly disheartened by the repeated rejections, Kwame finally returned home, the weight of his failure pressing down on him. For 2 days after that, he came back from his work at the market without uttering much, withdrawn and silent. His heart was heavy with unspeakable sorrow and the fear of crushing his daughter's dreams. He simply did not know how to communicate to them the devastating truth that their aspirations, so hard-won, might not materialize due to his inability to provide. But one evening, sitting alone in his room, he summoned his courage, the courage that had sustained him through years of hardship. He requested Adwoa and Ngozi to come into his room, needing to face them and share the difficult truth. "My daughters," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper, thick with unspoken pain, "I am deeply, profoundly sorry. I feel as though I have failed both of you in the most fundamental way. Please forgive me." He paused, gathering his strength. "I made a solemn vow long ago, when you were mere infants, helpless in my arms, that I would send you to the furthest corners of the earth to pursue your studies, if that is what it took. But now, despite all my efforts, I do not even possess enough to send you to university here in our own country." He attempted to maintain his composure, to be strong for them as he always had been, but his voice faltered, cracking under the strain of his grief and shame. He averted his face, unable to look at their hopeful young eyes, and swallowed hard, trying desperately to suppress the tears that were threatening to overwhelm him. Ngozi, sensing the depth of his pain, stood and spoke gently, her voice filled with immediate, unconditional love. "Daddy," she said softly, moving closer to him, "there is absolutely nothing to forgive. We know the depth of your affection for us. You have shown it in countless ways every single day of our lives. We know you would have sent us even to the moon if you had possessed the resources." Adwoa added her voice, equally heartfelt. "Regardless of whether we attend university or not, our love for you remains constant, unwavering. Your sacrifices for us mean everything." Both girls then moved towards him, wrapping their arms tightly around their father, embracing him in a spontaneous gesture of comfort and profound love, letting him know he was not alone in his sorrow. That night, when Kwame was certain his daughters were sleeping soundly in their own room, he knelt quietly beside his sleeping mat on the floor, the familiar place where he offered his nightly prayers, and began to weep before God. His voice was subdued, muffled by the darkness and his attempt to remain unheard, but the anguish within it was raw and profound. "God," he whispered, his voice thick with tears, "please intervene and aid me now. You see my situation. I possess nothing. I am utterly helpless, but you possess everything. All resources are in your hands. My girls deserve this opportunity. They have worked so hard. Please, Lord, in your mercy, enable me somehow to send them to pursue their studies, to fulfill their potential." He wept bitterly, his tears flowing freely, striking his hands against the worn floor in a gesture of desperation and fervent prayer. His shoulders convulsed with the force of his sobs. He pleaded with the Almighty, pouring out his heart like a man drowning in sorrow, clinging to the hope of divine intervention. Unbeknownst to him, Adwoa and Ngozi were awake, their sleep disturbed by the sound of his quiet, agonizing cries. They overheard everything, every tearful word, every desperate plea. It shattered their hearts to hear their strong, resilient father, their unwavering support through all their lives, weep with such profound pain, especially knowing it was because of them and their dashed dreams. They buried their faces in their pillows, muffling their own quiet sobs, sharing his sorrow in the darkness. The subsequent few days unfolded with a measure of quiet tranquility in the household, a calm that masked the recent emotional turmoil. Adwoa and Ngozi, though saddened by the turn of events regarding their university plans, remained remarkably resilient and determined. They took a courageous and practical step together. They proceeded to the university offices and formally deferred their admission, postponing their studies for a year. It was a painful decision to make, acknowledging the delay in their dreams, but they had conceived a strategic plan. They intended to find work, diligently accumulate savings, and provide assistance to their father, contributing significantly towards their tuition fees by the following year. One day, armed with hope and determination, they went out together specifically in search of employment, ready to do whatever was necessary. Following numerous rejections, the disheartening experience of being turned away repeatedly, they finally secured positions in a well-maintained and respectable eatery in the city, a place known for its clean environment and good service. Adwoa and Ngozi commenced working there immediately, embracing the opportunity with enthusiasm. They greeted patrons with welcoming, genuine smiles, served meals attentively and efficiently, and demonstrated respect towards everyone they encountered, from the management to their fellow staff members to the customers. Their positive attitude and diligent work ethic quickly made them favorites. Customers were fond of them, appreciating their warmth and sincerity, and often offered generous gratuities, recognizing their hard work. Some men, unfortunately, attempted to exploit their perceived impoverished situation or make inappropriate advances, but the twins firmly maintained their dignity and principles, politely but resolutely refusing to compromise their values or engage in anything unethical. They saved nearly every coin they earned, their shared goal of university education a constant motivation. At night, they would tally their earnings, marveling at their growing savings, and offer prayers alongside their father, who never ceased praying for them. Each day, Kwame knelt and invoked divine blessings upon the work of their hands, praying for their safety, their success, and their future. After approximately 7 months of diligent effort, tireless saving, and unwavering prayer, Adwoa and Ngozi took a bold leap of faith. They inaugurated a small eatery of their own, investing their hard-earned savings and calling it Maisha Bites, a name that spoke of life and sustenance. It was not a spacious establishment, quite modest in size, but it was meticulously clean, orderly, and arranged in a pleasant, inviting manner. They poured their hearts into preparing delectable cuisine, dishes that were both flavorful and comforting, and treated every customer who walked through their door as if they were valued members of their own family, offering warmth and personalized service. They also wisely utilized social media platforms for promotion, sharing appealing pictures of their food and the welcoming atmosphere. Before long, word spread, and patrons began arriving in considerable numbers, drawn by the quality of the food and the warmth of the service. The modest eatery became renowned locally for its excellence. Adwoa and Ngozi were finally, steadily ascending, their hard work beginning to yield significant results. They continued, with disciplined focus, to set aside every portion of the revenue they generated, reinvesting in the business and saving for their future goals. The aspiration of becoming medical practitioners still burned brightly within their hearts, the initial dream that had propelled them. However, life, with its unpredictable twists and turns, had begun to carve out its own distinct trajectory for them, one centered around entrepreneurship and hospitality. Fate, it seemed, nevertheless, had something entirely different, something unexpected and remarkable awaiting them. One evening, after a long, exhausting day spent on their feet at the eatery, Adwoa was diligently wiping down the tables, preparing to close, when her hand brushed against something hard beneath one of the chairs. She bent down and discovered a dark, leather briefcase. "Look, Ngozi," she exclaimed, holding it up for her sister to see, her voice filled with surprise. Someone must have forgotten this here. Curiosity, a natural human trait, overcame them briefly. They exchanged a look and cautiously opened the briefcase to examine its contents. They froze, their eyes widening in astonishment and disbelief. Inside were numerous important-looking documents, arranged neatly, and beneath them, a substantial stack of crisp American dollars, bundled together. Ngozi's eyes widened even further. "This individual," she whispered in awe, "must possess considerable wealth. This is so much money." Despite the overwhelming temptation that such a sum might present to others in their situation, they did not delay or entertain any improper thoughts. They immediately closed the briefcase, recognizing its significance and value, and brought it back home with them, knowing it belonged to someone else. When Kwame saw it, his daughters recounting the discovery with wide eyes and hushed tones. He listened intently, then nodded, his expression serious but calm. "You acted appropriately by bringing it home," he affirmed, his voice steady. "Do not be concerned. The rightful owner will assuredly come searching for this. A bag containing such important documents and currency is far too valuable to simply misplace and not seek out." The next morning, adhering to their routine and their principles, the girls returned to the eatery early, carrying the dark briefcase with them, ready to restore it to its owner. As they arrived, just as they were unlocking the door, they observed a man of affluent appearance, impeccably dressed, standing beside a gleaming, dark automobile parked outside, exhibiting clear signs of distress. He was pacing back and forth, running a hand through his hair, looking anxious. When they greeted him politely, he immediately inquired, his voice tinged with desperation, "Excuse me, but by any chance, have you seen a black briefcase? I seem to have misplaced it, and it contains very important items." "Yes, sir," Adwoa replied, her voice calm and respectful. Reaching into the sack they carried, she carefully retrieved the briefcase and handed it over to him. The man quickly took it, his relief palpable, washing over his anxious features. "Thank you profoundly," he said swiftly, his voice filled with gratitude, retrieved the briefcase, entered his vehicle, and drove away without uttering another word or offering any form of reward. Ngozi blinked in surprise as the car sped off. "Well," she quipped jokingly, trying to lighten the moment, "he ought to have at least offered us one of those dollars, don't you think?" Adwoa laughed, amused by her sister's remark. "So, now in your thoughts," she teased, "you desire dollars? I shall henceforth start referring to you as Lady Dollars." They both shared a laugh, their brief moment of expectation quickly replaced by their usual cheerful demeanor, and entered the eatery to commence the day's tasks. They were still the sole two individuals working there, managing everything themselves. The establishment had not yet grown sufficiently to warrant employing additional staff, but they remained hopeful, trusting in their hard work and God's plan. Each day represented a step forward, a small victory in their journey. Around midday, as the sun beat down intensely upon the bustling streets outside, casting harsh shadows, the very same man who had collected the briefcase earlier returned. He drove up in the same gleaming vehicle, its dark paint glinting in the sunlight, but this time he was not in a hurried or distressed state. He stopped the car purposefully, stepped out, and approached the eatery with a calm, pleasant demeanor. He smiled warmly at Adwoa and Ngozi, who were busy serving customers. "Good afternoon," he said, introducing himself formally. "I am Prince Kofi." The title itself commanded respect. "In recognition of your exceptional honesty and integrity yesterday, when you found and returned my briefcase," he continued, his voice sincere, "I wish to bestow a reward upon you." Adwoa and Ngozi exchanged hopeful glances, a silent communication passing between them, wondering if this would finally be the moment they received a little extra compensation, perhaps enough to make a real difference in their savings. But to their astonishment, Prince Kofi did not hand them any money. Instead, with a sweeping gesture, he led them away from their small eatery towards a large, imposing, and visibly impressive structure nearby, a building far grander than anything they had ever owned or even worked in. "This," he announced, a smile spreading across his face, "is for you." He gestured towards the building. "The documents contained within that briefcase were of far greater value to me than the currency it held. They were legal documents pertaining to my family's lineage and property rights, effectively safeguarding my entire future and heritage. By preserving that bag and returning it without question, you safeguarded my lineage. Now, as a token of my profound gratitude and respect for your character, I desire for you to possess this building for your eatery. It is entirely yours, free and clear. Adwoa and Ngozi stood there, side by side, in stunned silence, their minds struggling to process his words. They could not comprehend it. It seemed too extraordinary to be real. They had labored with such dedication, day in and day out, through hardship and uncertainty. And now, it appeared as though a cherished, seemingly impossible dream, a reward for their simple honesty, had materialized before their eyes. Grateful tears welled up uncontrollably in their eyes as they expressed their thanks repeatedly, their voices choked with emotion, their hearts brimming with a happiness so profound it felt overwhelming. They swiftly hailed a taxi, eager to share the incredible news, and proceeded directly to locate their father. They spotted him, the familiar figure of strength, at the bustling marketplace, standing beside his trusted pushcart, taking a moment to enjoy a refreshing glass of kunu drink, a sweet, fermented beverage. Without a word, their excitement overflowing, they rushed to him, embracing him tightly, a wave of love and shared triumph washing over them. Onlookers in the market stared openly, amazed by the sight of these two beautiful, well-dressed young women embracing the seemingly impoverished man. Kwame chuckled, shaking his head in disbelief at their unexpected arrival and enthusiastic embrace. "Sit, my daughters," he said with a warm, loving smile, his heart full. "Allow me to purchase some kunu for you. You look excited." They sat down with him on a nearby bench, sipping the cool beverage, their energy practically vibrating with the news they carried. Finally, unable to contain it any longer, Ngozi spoke, her voice resonating with barely contained exhilaration. "Daddy," she burst out, "we have a surprise for you."
A truly amazing surprise.
"What is it?" Kwame inquired, his curiosity piqued, a knowing smile on his face as he wondered what delightful thing his daughters had planned this time. Words, they quickly realized, could not adequately convey the magnitude of their excitement or the nature of the gift. So, they simply rose, motioning for him to follow them, their eyes sparkling with anticipation. Kwame, sensing the significance of the moment, immediately rose to his feet, leaving his pushcart behind for the moment, and accompanied them, his heart swelling with a mixture of pride and curiosity. When they reached the large building, the impressive structure Prince Kofi had given them, Ngozi's voice resonated with pure joy and triumph. "It is ours, Daddy," she declared, gesturing expansively towards the building. "It belongs to us. The man who lost the briefcase, Prince Kofi, he gave it to us. He stated that we should establish our eatery here, in this building." Tears of happiness, relief, and overwhelming gratitude filled Kwame's eyes. He could not, for a moment, believe what he was hearing. It seemed too wonderful, too miraculous to be true. The eatery, the new beginning, the extraordinary reward for his daughter's simple act of integrity, it embodied everything he had ever envisioned and prayed for them. They all celebrated together, right there before the building, laughter and shared happiness filling the air as they stood before the physical manifestation of their dreams and sacrifices. That evening, back at home, Adwoa and Ngozi sat down with their father, a quiet, serious conversation replacing the earlier exuberance. They could perceive the strain etched onto his countenance, the cumulative toll of the years of demanding labor under the harsh sun taking its toll on his body. Adwoa spoke first, her voice soft with affection but resolute in its purpose. "Dad," she began gently, "it is time for you to cease pushing the pushcart. You are no longer getting younger, and this type of arduous, back-breaking work is suitable for younger men. Not for you anymore," she stated, her voice filled with love and concern for his well-being. Ngozi nodded in firm agreement, her expression mirroring her sister's. "We are capable of handling things now, Daddy. You have equipped us with everything we need to succeed through your sacrifices and your love. And now, she concluded, her voice full of conviction. "It is time for you to enjoy some repose, to rest." Kwame opened his mouth as if to object, perhaps to protest that he was still able-bodied or that he wanted to contribute, but he perceived the unwavering resolve and deep affection in their eyes. He could not help but be profoundly moved by their words, their recognition of his sacrifice and their desire to care for him in return. They had worked so tirelessly themselves, endured their own hardships, and now they stood tall, capable and independent, no longer reliant on him in the way they once were. With a heavy heart, acknowledging the end of an era of struggle, yet filled with an immense, overflowing sense of pride in the remarkable young women they had become, Kwame agreed to retire from his arduous labor that very day. Prince Kofi had not merely provided them with the building. In his generosity and appreciation, he had also furnished it fully, providing new seating arrangements, sturdy tables, ample plates, and all the necessary cooking vessels. He had supplied everything required to ensure the eatery's immediate prosperity and smooth operation. The girls, in turn, poured their hearts and souls into perfecting the establishment, infusing it with their personality and dedication. Adwoa and Ngozi's eatery was soon buzzing with activity from morning until evening. The ambience was refined yet inviting, orderly, and genuinely cordial, making every customer feel welcome. The cuisine they prepared was extraordinarily delicious, drawing people in with its aroma and taste. And their hospitality, kind, patient, and genuine, was a powerful driving force behind their triumph. Soon, patrons were flocking in daily, not only relishing the delightful meals but also the warm, welcoming environment the twins had cultivated. The eatery was no longer just a commercial enterprise. It was a beacon of hope, a tangible pathway out of hardship, and a deeply cherished aspiration realized through dedicated work, unwavering perseverance, and a little bit of unexpected grace. More significantly, the girls ensured, with the same dedication they applied to their business, that their father was well cared for in his retirement. He no longer had to endure strenuous physical labor under the oppressive heat of the sun. They treated him with utmost reverence and respect, providing for him in ways he could never have imagined during his years of struggle. His weary, weathered hands, calloused from years of pushing the heavy cart, no longer needed to bear heavy burdens. Instead, he spent his days benefiting from the outcomes of their efforts, finding peace and fulfillment in recognizing that his sacrifices, his years of dedication, had indeed paved the path for their remarkable success and his own eventual comfort. But Adwoa and Ngozi, with their hearts full of gratitude, did not overlook those who had assisted them along their challenging journey. They particularly remembered Mama Karo, who had been an unexpected but vital source of support and maternal care when they were just tiny infants, and later a safe haven when Kwame worked. She was now advanced in years, frequently ailing, her health failing, but she had been a quiet, unwavering pillar of strength and kindness in their lives during their most vulnerable period. Adwoa and Ngozi ensured her existence was as comfortable and secure as possible in her old age. They renovated her small dwelling, making it warm, safe, and habitable, ensuring she had a comfortable place to live. Each month, they sent her financial assistance, covering her medical expenses and guaranteeing she never lacked anything essential for her comfort and well-being. Their benevolence and care towards Mama Karo were just as sincere and deeply felt as their affection and provision for their beloved father. They understood the profound significance of gratitude and desired, above all, to ensure that the individuals who had aided them along their difficult way were never forgotten or left wanting. One afternoon, amidst the usual hustle and bustle of the eatery, a woman entered, appearing disoriented, visibly weary, and down on her luck. Her clothes were simple, her shoulders slumped with fatigue. "What do you require, madam?" One of the serving staff, a kind young woman Adwoa and Ngozi had recently employed, inquired respectfully, her voice tinged with curiosity and perhaps a touch of sympathy. The woman looked up, her eyes, though tired, held a glimmer of desperate hope. "I am seeking employment," she stated simply, her voice soft but clear. The staff member, sensing the depth of desperation in her tone and demeanor, gently guided her towards Adwoa and Ngozi, the owners. The woman, standing before the twins, clasped her hands together and pleaded earnestly, "I am capable of performing any task you require. Washing dishes until they sparkle, mopping floors until they are clean, serving meals with a smile. Please," she implored, her voice filled with urgency, "I simply need work. I need a chance." Although there were, in truth, no currently available positions for a new employee, Adwoa and Ngozi felt a peculiar, inexplicable pull in their hearts towards the woman, a sense of recognition or perhaps just profound empathy. They could not articulate precisely why, but they decided, against practical considerations, to extend an opportunity to her, giving her a chance she clearly desperately needed. They assigned her the task of washing dishes in the kitchen, a humble but necessary role. Unbeknownst to Adwoa and Ngozi, this woman, weary and seeking work, was Aisha, their birth mother, the woman who had abandoned them as infants. After leaving Kwame and the twins, she had gone on to 3 unsuccessful marriages to men she believed were prosperous, each union ultimately leaving her with nothing, poorer than before. Back at the starting point, she had exploited others in her quest for comfort and luxury and, in turn, had been exploited herself by those she had pursued. But this time, it appeared she had truly nowhere else to turn, no one left to rely on. The following day, Kwame, as was his custom now, came to visit his daughters at the successful eatery, proud of their accomplishments and enjoying spending time with them. After exchanging pleasantries and observing the flourishing business for a while, he made his way towards the kitchen area, perhaps to greet the staff or simply see the heart of the operation. There, he saw Aisha working diligently at the sink, her back partially turned towards him. She had not noticed his presence in the doorway. Kwame quietly withdrew, stepping back into the main area, his heart heavy with a complex mix of emotions, painful memories, lingering hurt, and a strange sense of inevitability. He found his daughters, motioned for them to sit down with him at a quiet table, and spoke, his voice imbued with a quiet seriousness that immediately captured their attention. "Do you have a new person working in the kitchen as a dishwasher?" he asked, his gaze steady. "Yes, Daddy," Adwoa replied, slightly surprised by his specific question. "Why do you ask? Do you know her?" Ngozi added, looking perplexed. "No," they both answered truthfully. They had never seen her face before, not in any pictures. He cleared his throat, preparing himself for the difficult revelation, his words slow and deliberate. "That woman," he said softly, his voice heavy with history, "that woman is Aisha. She is your mother." Ngozi's eyes widened in immediate disbelief, her mouth falling slightly open.
What?
"Our mother?" "That woman," she stammered. "Yes," Kwame confirmed gently. "She is your mother. After she departed, I destroyed every photograph of her. The recollections, the pain of her leaving, were too difficult to bear, too painful to see every day. Consequently, you have never seen her countenance, not since you were tiny babies." The 3 of them, united in the gravity of the moment, walked slowly towards the kitchen. When Aisha, engrossed in her work, saw Kwame standing there in the doorway, his daughters beside him, the color drained completely from her face, and she froze, unable to articulate a single word, trapped by the past colliding with the present. Kwame took a deep, steadying breath, the air thick with unspoken history and raw emotion. He turned his gaze towards Aisha, his voice steady despite the heavy weight of everything that had transpired between them. "Aisha," he said, his voice carrying just enough to be heard, "the individuals who employed you, the owners of this successful establishment, they're your daughters, Adwoa and Ngozi." Aisha's face lost the last vestige of color, turning ashen. Her lips trembled uncontrollably as she whispered, the words barely audible, filled with a lifetime of regret compressed into a single moment. I am so profoundly sorry," she choked out, tears springing to her eyes. "I am so profoundly sorry, my daughters." The words emerged as soft, broken sobs, a sound of deep, undeniable remorse, as she lowered her head in shame and regret, unable to meet their eyes. Adwoa's face hardened instantly, a tempest of raw emotions brewing visibly in her eyes. Hurt, anger, betrayal, and disbelief. "You must leave," she stated firmly, her voice cold and unwavering, drawing a clear line between the past and the present. She picked up a quantity of cash from the counter nearby, more than Aisha could possibly have earned during her brief time washing dishes, and extended it towards her hand trembling slightly with emotion. "Take this," she commanded, her voice taut. "Go somewhere. I do not know you, and you are not my mother." "My mother," she declared, her voice cracking slightly on the word, filled with fierce loyalty and love. "My mother is Mama Karo, the woman who cared for us, not a stranger who abandoned us." Her voice cracked distinctly on that final phrase, but the anger still burned fiercely within her heart, fueled by years of unspoken pain. Ngozi, who had been silently observing the unfolding, heartbreaking scene, her own heart aching with conflicting emotions, instinctively wrapped her arms around her sister, embracing her tightly, offering comfort and support. "I understand you are in pain, Adwoa," she said softly, her voice filled with compassion and a different kind of sorrow. "And so am I. This is difficult for all of us. But please, do not send her away like this. Not now. Not when she is clearly in need. She requires our assistance." Adwoa's face contorted with grief, the protective shield of anger beginning to crumble. Tears began to flow unchecked down her cheeks, tears she had held back for so long. "I have no desire to help her," she whispered fiercely through her sobs. Then, gesturing wildly towards Aisha, who stood trembling and weeping, she cried out, her voice raw with anguish. "This woman abandoned us. She went her own way, seeking her own comfort, while we were left behind, left to fend for ourselves. She left us, tiny, helpless infants, with our father to endure hardship and potential death." The anguish in her voice was visceral, the raw, painful truth finally pouring forth from the deepest recesses of her heart after being suppressed for years. Her sobs echoed through the kitchen, deep and agonizing, releasing a lifetime of hurt. The tears seemed interminable, washing away the anger, leaving only the pain. But slowly, gradually, as the overwhelming emotions poured out, releasing their suffocating grip, she began to regain a semblance of composure, though her body still trembled with the aftershocks. The burden of grief, so heavy for so long, lightened, if only for a brief moment. Aisha, trembling herself, reached out a tentative hand towards them, her voice filled with remorse, so deep it resonated in the quiet kitchen. "I am sorry," she repeated, her voice broken. "I am so truly sorry, my daughters. Please, please extend your forgiveness to me. I was young, foolish, and selfishly self-absorbed. I made terrible mistakes. Please forgive me for abandoning you." That evening, Kwame sat down with his daughters, his face etched with a quiet sadness that reflected the pain of the day's events. The conversation that ensued was difficult, navigating years of hurt and resentment. The atmosphere in the room was thick with tension and unresolved emotions, but ultimately, despite the profound pain, their hearts, influenced by Kwame's wisdom and their own inherent kindness, softened. They chose, with conscious effort, to forgive Aisha, although they knew intimately that it was not an easy decision to reach, nor one that instantly erased the past. The next day, Adwoa and Ngozi resolved to assign Aisha a new capacity within the eatery. They could not bear the thought of her continuing to perform the menial, physically demanding dishwashing duties, despite their complex feelings towards her. They decided she would assume the role of a supervisor, overseeing certain aspects of the operations, a position that would not only provide her with a better income but also enable her to demonstrate accountability and potentially earn respect through her work. Initially, for a period, Aisha seemed to embody the benevolence and positive spirit that the establishment required. The staff had no grievances with her, she was polite and helpful, and patrons appeared to respond positively to her gentle presence and willingness to assist. However, slowly, subtly, over time, a disturbing transformation began to occur. Aisha's temper, perhaps dormant for a while, became increasingly volatile. Her once soft, gentle voice turned sharp, critical, and imperious. She began to intimidate the workers, snapping at them for minor errors, her demeanor souring like milk left out in the heat, becoming increasingly unpleasant and demanding. The atmosphere in the eatery, which had been so warm and inviting, grew tense and uncomfortable. Staff members, intimidated by her unpredictable outbursts, started avoiding her, and customers, sensitive to the shift in mood and the underlying tension, began to notice the change. Gradually, like a slow, insidious leak in a vessel, the eatery's clientele began to diminish. The warmth, joy, and welcoming spirit that had once permeated the place were now superseded by unease and negativity. Adwoa and Ngozi observed the change with growing concern but were unsure how to rectify the situation without causing further conflict. The enterprise for which they had toiled so diligently, the symbol of their triumph, seemed to be subtly slipping from their grasp, its success jeopardized by their mother's presence and behavior. Adwoa and Ngozi had a serious, heartfelt discussion with their mother one evening, their faces solemn and filled with deep concern for both the business and, perhaps, for her. They felt compelled to address her disruptive conduct and the negative impact it was having, genuinely hoping she might be receptive to their feedback and change her ways. But when they spoke, Aisha's defiance and resentment were unmistakable, palpable in the air. "I am your mother," she retorted sharply, her voice cold and cutting, pulling rank in an attempt to dismiss their concerns. "I brought you into this world. You are not in a position to dictate my actions or tell me how to behave." Adwoa, feeling the sting of her mother's words and her dismissive attitude, strove desperately to remain composed, focusing on the issue at hand. "You are here to assist us," she explained calmly, "to help us manage the business. But your attitude, your temper, is undermining everything we have strived so hard to build, everything we have achieved." Aisha's eyes narrowed, filled with resentment, and she continued her bitter accusations, shifting the focus. "And where is your father?" she demanded scornfully. "The one you constantly provide with money? He is indolent, merely sitting at home, doing nothing, and you give him everything he desires. But as for me, your own mother, all you offer is my meager remuneration for working here." Adwoa's face darkened with sudden, protective anger at the insult directed towards the father who had sacrificed everything for them. "I will have a serious issue with you," she stated firmly, her voice low and warning, "if you ever speak disparagingly about my father again. Do you understand?" But Aisha, fueled by her own bitterness and perceived injustices, was not finished. "You do not truly love me," she retorted, her voice dripping with resentment and self-pity. "You are merely tolerating my presence here because you feel some kind of obligation." The conversation quickly escalated into a heated exchange, a painful confrontation filled with accusations and past hurts, with neither party willing to yield or truly listen to the other. Finally, after the tense and exhausting encounter, Adwoa and Ngozi went to their father, seeking solace, guidance, and perhaps permission for what they knew they had to do. They poured out their frustrations and worries to Kwame, feeling exhausted and disheartened by the conflict. Kwame listened attentively, his expression one of deep understanding and quiet sadness. After considerable thought, he spoke, his voice heavy with wisdom gained from years of difficult experience and observation. "She is still your mother," he acknowledged, stating the undeniable fact of their relationship, "and that is a bond that cannot be severed. But," he continued, his voice firm with conviction, "if you permit her to continue working at the eatery in this manner, with this attitude, she will dismantle everything you have worked so hard to establish. She will bring it all down." After considerable deliberation, weighing the difficult choices and the potential consequences, Adwoa and Ngozi arrived at a painful but necessary resolution. The following day, summoning their courage, they informed Aisha that, regretfully, she would no longer be employed at the eatery. Her reaction was swift, explosive, and full of unleashed rage. "I know it is your foolish father," she shrieked, her voice shaking with fury and accusation, pointing a trembling finger towards their home, "who has poisoned your minds against me. He has always hated me." The insult, directed at the man who had been their rock, was deeply painful, but Adwoa and Ngozi stood firm, their decision made with a heavy heart but clear minds. They watched as their mother, consumed by her anger and bitterness, stormed away from the eatery, her harsh, accusing words lingering painfully in the air long after she was gone. Despite the pain of their mother's departure and the difficulty of their decision, the twins did not leave her entirely without support. Recognizing her need, and perhaps hoping to foster some degree of independence, they established a small retail space for her directly in front of her residence, setting her up to manage her own affairs and earn a living. It was not the ideal solution, nor did it bridge the emotional chasm between them, but it was something, a lifeline offered despite the hurt. Kwame, though deeply hurt by the entirety of what had transpired, the repeated pain inflicted by Aisha, still harbored, in the quiet corners of his heart, a longing for the days when things had been better, when they had been a family. He desired, perhaps more than anything, to put the painful past behind him and welcome Aisha back into their lives as his wife, to rebuild what was broken. But Aisha's behavior, her consistent choices, and the deep, festering wounds she had inflicted had pushed him too far, and he found himself, sadly, unable to reconcile the pain or bridge the emotional distance that had grown between them. Meanwhile, with the source of tension removed, the eatery thrived, experiencing a resurgence. With Aisha's absence, the atmosphere improved dramatically, becoming warm and welcoming once again, and business flourished. Word spread rapidly about the genuinely welcoming service, the positive energy, and the consistently delectable cuisine. Soon, the eatery was prospering as never before, its reputation growing across the city. Adwoa and Ngozi, fueled by their success and renewed sense of purpose, expanded their enterprise, inaugurating new branches in cities across the country, their brand becoming well known. Their dedicated work, unwavering commitment to quality, and inherent kindness had yielded remarkable results, and they were finally witnessing the abundant rewards of their labor, their dreams of providing fulfilled in an unexpected way. But it was not solely the financial gain they had achieved. It was the tranquility, the stability, and the sense of fulfillment they had discovered in their work and in caring for their father. Their father was content, living comfortably in retirement, no longer burdened by the disruptive presence of their mother, and the eatery had, unequivocally, once again become the cornerstone of their prosperity and their shared life. Now that financial constraints were no longer an issue, the pressing need for money no longer the primary driver, they sat down together and discussed their original ambition, the cherished dream of becoming medical doctors, the goal for which Kwame had suffered and prayed. Ngozi spoke first, her voice soft yet imbued with a quiet certainty and peace that surprised even herself. That fervent desire, she mused aloud, looking around the bustling eatery, it no longer resides within me as it once did. I have found my passion here. I am passionate about our business. She surveyed the vibrant activity of customers and staff, the tangible reality of what they had built, and felt a profound sense of satisfaction and purpose that medicine no longer seemed to offer. What had begun as an aspiration to become physicians now seemed distant, almost irrelevant in comparison to the joy, fulfillment, and positive impact they found in their current work. Adwoa, nodding in quiet agreement, smiled warmly, recognizing the same shift within herself. "This enterprise, Maisha Bites," she said, her eyes shining. "I truly believe it is God's response to our father's heartfelt supplications all those years ago, his tearful prayers by his mat. This is what was meant to be. I, too, no longer wish to pursue a medical career. I cherish this business. I cherish what we have built here." Her eyes sparkled not for future in sterile medical environments, but for the flourishing establishment they had cultivated, a place where they could continue to assist others, provide livelihoods, and serve their community, albeit in a different capacity than originally imagined. Together, they shared a quiet, understanding moment, their hearts at peace with the unexpected but fulfilling path they had chosen. The ambition that had once burned brightly for medicine had been gently supplanted by a deeper, more resonant passion for their business, and they knew, with quiet certainty, that they had discovered their true calling in life. As time elapsed, bringing continued success and stability, potential spouses began to appear for Adwoa and Ngozi, young men who recognized their character, diligence, and beauty. Both twins felt prepared, emotionally and practically, to commence a new, joyous chapter in their lives, that of marriage and building their own families. The excitement of planning their weddings filled the air with anticipation and happiness. In a decision that reflected their close bond, the twins decided to schedule their ceremonies for the same day, a truly special day that would be shared not only with their future husbands, but with their beloved father and Mama Karo. However, a concern arose, a small shadow amidst the joy, regarding leaving their father alone in the home after they were both married. After careful consideration and loving discussion, the girls resolved to address the matter proactively, wanting to ensure their father's continued happiness and companionship. One afternoon, slightly apprehensive about proposing such a personal idea but determined to see him settled and happy, they sat down with their father to discuss their plan. Adwoa began, her voice gentle and full of affection, choosing her words carefully. "Father," she started, looking into his kind eyes, "we know you are pleased that we have found partners and are beginning our own families, and your blessing means everything to us. But we are concerned that you remain alone in the home after we leave. Not all women in the world are like our mother, Daddy," she stated, a quiet understanding in her voice, "and we truly believe there are virtuous, kind women available who would cherish and care for you." Ngozi continued where her sister left off, her voice confident and hopeful. "Daddy, we have actually found a suitable woman for you, someone we know and trust." Kwame's face softened with surprise and interest as he regarded his thoughtful daughters. "Oh," he inquired, a smile beginning to form. "Who is she, this woman you believe is suitable for your old father?" Ngozi smiled back, feeling confident in their choice and hopeful for his acceptance. "She works in one of our establishments," she explained. "She is a wonderful, kind person. She has consistently shown us kindness and respect, and we even seek her counsel on certain matters because she is wise and experienced. Her husband passed away some years ago, and she has two lovely children, a boy and a girl." She paused, then added the hopeful consequence of their plan. "If you were to marry her, Daddy, her children would become like our younger siblings, part of our family, and we would, of course, ensure they receive a good education, just as you did for us." Kwame was taken aback for a moment by the unexpected proposal. He was uncertain how to react, a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions passing through his mind. The memory of Aisha, the years of solitude, the prospect of a new beginning. But after a lengthy pause, a moment of quiet reflection, he nodded slowly, considering the possibilities. "I appreciate your thoughtfulness, my daughters," he said softly. "I require some time for contemplation. This is a significant decision." After 2 days of quiet reflection and prayer, considering their words and his own feelings, he finally agreed. He met Madame Abina, the woman they had spoken of with such high regard, and after conversing with her for a considerable time, he perceived her genuine, kind, and gentle nature, her strength and warmth. He felt a sense of peace regarding the prospect of building a life with her and her children. He gave his consent to marry her, trusting his daughter's judgment and his own feelings. The wedding ceremony was planned to coincide with Adwoa and Ngozi's, a triple celebration of new beginnings. On that momentous, joyous day, the place of worship was filled to capacity with love, happiness, and the warmth of community as Kwame, Adwoa, and Ngozi all celebrated their marriages, their lives intertwined in a beautiful tapestry of past struggles and future hopes. Mama Karo, who had served as a beloved maternal figure to them all, stood proudly as the chief mother of the day, her presence a powerful symbol of the love, resilience, and unity of their unconventional but strong family. It was a day marking not just new beginnings for the girls and their husbands, but a truly happy and peaceful new beginning for their devoted father as well, a culmination of his selfless love and years of sacrifice.